Hi, welcome. I'm back in my kitchen, as you can tell, and it's nighttime, and the lighting on this is pretty spectacular, if I do say so myself, at least comparatively to all my other videos. So I don't know if we'll ever really get to achieve this often, because this is kind of a lightning in a bottle moment. But I'm really, I think this is really great. So we're gonna just try to work with it. Um, yeah, we'll see how this goes. Um, it's been a day, you know. I've been drinking a little, which I just want to be honest with you, I guess. I feel like there's a point where you can tell, maybe, and maybe that's just in my mind. I feel like I'm a lot more confident when I have had a little to drink, and the Spurs lost against the Knicks today, so yeah, it's been not the greatest evening in terms of that, but we were thugging it out, you know. And I wanted to record a video because now I do have the chance to utilize this space and this lighting, and instead of just being like, oh, I'll wait for it tomorrow or something like that. Slightly buzzed Jonah wants to record something, and I hope it isn't too preachy because I think the more I've been thinking about it and kind of like trying to work it out in my mind, it seems very preachy, and I hope it is not that because I did say that's not what I'm wanting to do. I'm just kind of wanting to share what I'm thinking about. Um, so earlier today, when we were getting pizza, my sister and I, for the game tonight, and we went to Little Caesars, and when we were there, I picked up the pizza. We had driven her car, and when we went to leave, her car wouldn't start. She had run out of gas. And this was something that's happened before because her little indicator for the gas is broken. And so I had gotten her a gas canister beforehand when this happened the last time, just in case it ever happened again. And so we ended up having to walk about like 10 minutes or so to the nearest gas station from where we were at. And while we were walking, I was talking to her about how the circumstance itself feels so funny, I guess. And maybe funny isn't the right word, but it's just kind of like what fit the situation. And that when you are growing or experiencing growth, wanting to make that active, conscious decision to grow, it often feels like your life is like falling apart, you know? And I think oftentimes when you find yourself in those moments, especially early on in your growth, it feels as though the world is just trying to get you. You're like, I'm making an active effort to be better. I don't want to repeat these same mistakes. I don't want to, you know, perpetuate these same behaviors. And it feels like life is just testing me in this way. And I think now that I'm at where I'm at now, which is further than I think I've ever been, but I know there's still so much more to go, I'm able to see that maybe that's the point, you know? You think about it this way, that if you weren't experiencing things like adversity in terms of you wanting to grow, where else would the growth come from, you know? If you were living the same way you had always been, reinforcing poor behaviors, um, giving in to specific mindsets that keep you trapped and stagnant, not really wanting you to succeed or push yourself further, knowing that you probably can, life in that context feels like it's going smoothly because nothing's really pushing back against you. You're, you know, reinforcing these same feedback loops. You're constantly giving in to the same things you've always given into. And so things feel natural. But the moment you make an active decision to go against that, to, you know, ride up the river instead of going with it, things are, of course, going to feel like really bad, you know, for lack of a better word. It's just going to feel bad. It's going to feel like you're constantly messing up. It's going to feel like you're just not destined to succeed. But that's what comes, or that is what the cost is of having to go against the grain. It's going to be adversity, it's going to be trouble, it's going to be tribulation. And what I'm learning for myself now is learning to embrace those things and learning to give myself grace in those moments where, if you want to look at it like a test, you fail one test where you get frustrated, you give into a certain behavior, you you know, whatever it is that makes you feel as though, dang, I'm not really changing at all. I think the adversity itself is a testament that you are growing. And that's a very difficult thing to acknowledge because it's like a balancing act. For me specifically, I've lived on one side of that spectrum where I've been self deprecating. I've thought so poorly of myself that I didn't deserve good things, and I kept myself stuck in that regard. I didn't think that there was any room for improvement, that I could even achieve such improvement because I didn't deserve it. And on the opposite side of that, I don't want to get to a point where I feel arrogant in my growth, where I think I figured it all out. You know, I there's nothing more for me to learn. I've achieved it. I've gotten it. I figured it out. I don't want to get there either because that's also a bad place to be, thinking that, the growth really ever stops, and it doesn't. It's learning to balance right down the middle of that and knowing that you're always growing, you're always learning new things, you're always trying to unlearn some poor behavior and substitute it for a healthier one. But it's constant, you know. And and I think with when it comes to constant adversity, when you're experiencing growth, I think oftentimes we look at them negatively, like the world is out to get us. But I think ultimately they are opportunities to continue to facilitate the growth that we're seeking because we learn from mistakes. Maybe you mess up the first couple of times when these sort of situations arise. But if you're committed to growth, you are able to kind of notice what causes you to react a certain way or what causes you to think a certain way. And when that happens, over time, you're going to get to a point where you no longer act the way you used to or think the way that you used to. You're going to realize that change is happening, that when adversity comes, you are going to be a lot more calmer, you're going to be a lot more capable of assessing the situation, understanding it, deconstructing it, learning how to move past it in ways that you would have never done before. Because at the end of the day, we learn from mistakes. We learn from fucking up. I mean, that's how we learn. You don't really learn from getting it right the first time. Not always. But we convince ourselves that we have to get it right the first time. That good people get it right the first time. Nobody gets it right the first time. We don't know. We're all learning in this world together. And it's confusing and it's messy. But the longer we are committed to giving ourselves grace, to giving ourselves understanding that we're doing the best we can with what we've got, and ultimately, I believe, holding that feeling of not resentment, what's the word I'm looking for, of having a humble heart, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Having a heart filled with humility that will acknowledge when you've messed up and being able to accept that, knowing that you're imperfect, but also knowing that that doesn't immediately disqualify you from growth. Knowing that mistakes are going to happen constantly for you, but also holding the idea that that does not keep you from being able to become the person you want to become. And again, that's a very hard thing to do. I think it's a very tight balancing act. But I know it can be done. I feel it every day that I try my best to give myself grace, to look at myself and know that I am a person worthy of love, worthy of the ability to change and to become better, to become somebody that I can be proud of and want the best for. I know that person is in me. And I just have to keep giving him grace in the moments that he's unlearning a lot of things that he's lived with for so long. And I don't mean to speak of me, this version of myself, as some separate entity from myself. It's me. I gotta love myself, and I gotta give myself grace that I will get there one day, and with each and every day that I get closer, I have to recognize that and give myself prop for doing that. I'm sorry, I had to sneeze so badly. So I'm sorry for the abrupt cut. Uh, to wrap things up, I think we need to live more and more in this radical self-love of understanding that we are, at the very least, that who we are is a very nuanced person, that we are constantly trying to grow, we're constantly trying to get better, and that we deserve the grace to be able to mess up and to be able to not get it right the first few times. But to know that if we're constantly making the effort to get better, to not make those same mistakes anymore, that's where it counts, as opposed to someone who just doesn't want to do those things, who gives up, who likes living in that stagnation because it's comfortable. I often think we crave dysfunction because it's what we're used to. Yeah, the results of it are bad and it doesn't bring about anything fruitful for ourselves, but we know that about it, and that's what makes it consistent. And I think living in a world where, at least in America, nothing really feels consistent or guaranteed, those poor behaviors, those self-destructive behaviors, we might cling to them because they feel consistent. And the opposite end of that, of wanting to choose something healthier, of wanting to be, it's a lot more difficult, and it requires a lot more patience, a lot more discipline. And I think sometimes our minds are or hardwired rather, to choose what feels easier. And it's a lot easier just to kind of stay where you're at rather than pushing against the grain and trying to do differently and trying to be better. So, give yourself grace, love yourself, learn to love yourself, do whatever it is that it requires in order to give yourself that grace, to know that you're human and you're trying, and the constant effort of trying is enough. It is enough for now, and let yourself rest in that. So, yeah, I think I've rambled for quite a bit, and I'm sleepy, and I gotta work in the morning. So, thank you so much for being here and listening to me just yap. And I hope it was helpful, and I hope it was coherent, and I hope you enjoyed it. So please comment, let me know what you think. Let me know if you want to hear anything specific about me or that I can talk about. I don't want to consider myself, and I'm not very much at all an expert on any of this stuff, but I've gone through a lot. So I think that maybe that, offers something to somebody. So anyway, I'm going to go sleep. So take care of yourself, know that you're loved and cared for, and I will see you in the next video. So bye.